The beauty of a reset routine for me is to be able to celebrate leaving things behind and starting afresh. And so this video isn't going to be about getting yourself together or getting yourself in check for the new year. It's about having less resistance to navigating your finances, accepting the past for what it is and being able to let it go. And while this kind of reset routine and concept of a reset routine could apply to a lot of different things, this channel is all about money. I love talking about money, so we're going to focus on how to transform your finances with a reset routine for the new year. Now, for a yearly money routine, I like to focus on 4 areas: identity, audit, reflect, and plan. Now, for the identity work, I think it's something that we do need to check in with at least on a yearly basis just to make sure that our direction is right. But we need to ask ourselves the questions of who we want to be with money and how our relationship with money is actually going. Like, what kind of person are you with money? And also reflect on the version of yourself and the identity of money or with money that you had this year as well, and almost disassociate from that identity of yourself and ask yourself these questions. And if you're trying to explain to someone else how you behaved with money this year, how would you phrase that? And ask yourself some more difficult questions as well, like if there are any elements of your money identity that you don't want to resonate with or that you resent slightly. And don't forget to accept them, accept that they are what has happened before, and that you're leaving it behind. You're done with that. It's a previous version of yourself and an identity that you don't want to associate with anymore. The second thing is probably one of my favorite things, and not because it has the word audit in it. And this is the meatier task, but I promise you it's worth doing. And next year it'll be easier to do if you make a monthly money routine a consistent habit. Now, if you haven't really budgeted this year or had too much of a deep dive into your money, don't overwhelm yourself by trying to add up every line item of your transactions or every line item of what you've spent in a certain area, but instead just maybe download your statements for each month and just add up the income and the expenses. And then maybe just on a surface level, do a little bit of analysis on the categories of spending that you can see popping up more often. You don't need to do anything crazy and add anything up, but if you want to, go ahead, because that would be quite useful to look at. Now, if you have looked at your money this year, or if you enjoy budgeting, use this opportunity to do a full-on audit. Review all of your accounts and check how much is in what. Add them all up so you know and you're completely aware. See if you can combine any of those accounts and if they're all serving you in the right way. Like, do you still need all of these accounts open if you do have more than one? Review all your income and expenses and do this by category so you can see any trends or see any places that you weren't expecting to see. This will make the next few steps of reflecting and planning a lot more easier if you have this data in front of you. So even if you fall into the first category of people that I spoke about, where you haven't really looked at your money at all and you don't want to do a bit of a deep dive, as long as you have kind of categories of expenses to look at and play around with, I think that's a good bare minimum starting point. So try and do all of these things in a super simple template. I have attached a Notion instruction sheet to this video and I will put a link to it in the comments. Now, the third thing to do as part of your yearly money reset routine is to reflect. And I think reflection is really important because there's no point doing all the activity and not having a think about how you're going to use it to shape your future. And ask yourself a couple of questions. What categories surprised you? Like, you didn't think you'd spend much on groceries or food shops this year, but it ended up being your biggest expense. How does the spending make you feel? Break this down by category, and if you want, even attach it to your old money identity that you reflected on in step 1. For example, you can look at how much you maybe spent on clothing and ask yourself if you're happy that every penny you spend on clothing was worth it. And how does the clothing itself and having it make you feel? Can you remember everything you've bought this year? And by attaching it to your money identity and like your own values, it helps you make a decision here too. Like, for example, if buying too many clothes makes you feel more wasteful, that could be because the version of yourself that you're trying to leave behind wasn't sure on their style and was following trends and ended up being more wasteful, but you want to leave that behind now. And don't forget to focus on the positives as well, like what spending made you feel happy and proud, and do the exact same thing for your income and any money you earned. Like, were you happy, proud, and fulfilled with every penny you brought in? Was the work that you did for that money worth it? And how can you make sure that you're keeping those positives going in the year coming and that you're reducing the negatives? So if you don't feel happy or fulfilled or proud, how can you change that? And if you're not happy with the amount of money that came in as well, how can you change that? Can we increase it somehow? Can we start a side hustle? Can we start renting out some clothes? And also ask yourself the tough questions about savings, like, did your saving plans go ahead? Like, did they go to plan? And could they have been better, or could they actually have been worse? And use your money identity and what you hopefully identified in the first step to really nurture the way in which we answer these questions, but also take them forward into our plans and into the next year. Like, use your money identity to decide if you're going to be spending more or less in a certain category, or if you want to increase your income and how. And the fourth step is to plan. Setting goals that are tied to our identity and our values are going to end up being hit, and they're going to end up being achieved because they're more sustainable, because they're aligned to who you are. There's more purpose and intention behind them, and they're going to mean more when you achieve them, which means we're way more likely to transform our finances completely. Now, the first thing you can do is open up your year at a glance and have a look at what events you have coming up and what trips you have coming up. So these can be things like outside of money, specifically travel, career, business related, and have a think about how they do influence money and how they would influence any savings or spending plans. We can use these to influence some saving buckets or some sinking funds that you can set up at this point. Next up, we'll be looking at the categories in which you didn't feel too great about in the last year that we identified, hopefully in step 2, and use these categories to influence your budget coming up. When I talk about your budget, I mean having kind of like a yearly plan of what you kind of want to be spending each month. Instead of trying to eradicate the categories that you want to try to get rid of, let's just take the categories you weren't too happy with and try and reduce them by 10%. So if you spent too much on clothing in 2022 and you spent like, I don't know, it's £300 a month on clothing, just take the 10% off of it and add £270 a month spent on clothing for the next year. And hopefully we don't actually spend this amount on clothing each year. This way we're making a sustainable change to our spending habits, because this was a habit in the last year, so we can't just eradicate completely. It's not going to work like that. And we have reduced it, and we've also off the back of that got 10% to play around with in the budget itself. So if you do have a holiday coming up or something that you've got when you're looking at your year at a glance, you've got 10% more of your money to go towards saving up for that. And you can always use your identity, your money identity, to influence how you're going to use that 10% saving. But an example of using your money identity to influence your budget going forward is if the person you want to be with money is more financially secure and is less anxious with money, maybe that means you can take the 10% and put it towards an emergency fund or investing into an asset. Identity or value-based goals just allow you to pick a goal that is more in line with how you see the world, which means you're going to be more likely to achieve that goal. Now, once you establish the savings goal or the money goal that is related to an upcoming event or a value that you have, make sure that it's specific. Money loves specificity. I hope I said that right. So make sure you have a clear number for the goal as well as a time limit for when you want to achieve it by. Getting this written down digitally or physically is also a great idea. Being specific with a time and a number for this goal will just mean that it's easier for you to literally write it down and put it into your budget, which means that you're more likely to take action on it. You're less likely to just forget about this thing you wanted to save up for. So the planning section was a lot to do around getting the numbers to be specific and into a plan of the year, just so that you can see on paper what your kind of rough idea for how each month is going to go monetarily. But really importantly, the reset routine for me really encourages reflection and planning so that you can focus on the fact that you want to get better, but you want to use your old habits to shape how you're going to do things in the future. But at the same time, I really do want to emphasize what I said at the beginning of this video. You have to accept who you were with money and just forget about that person. You can use the identity to influence your current identity and what you want your identity to be, but you can't resent yourself for any mistakes that you made with money or any gaps in your knowledge, and you certainly can't punish yourself for making decisions that aren't maybe in line with who you want to be now, because at one point in time we all justified what we did and we can't feel guilty about it. So I hope this video helped you devise a reset routine plan for your money, and I will see you in the next video.